Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss how Labour could use Liz Truss as a major stick to keep Tories beaten down over the course of this Parliament. Not in the same way the Tories tried to use Jeremy Corbyn during the last Parliament, of course. That was doomed to failure. Boris Johnson and Rishi Sunak alike, whenever they got into trouble, especially at PMQs, would wheel out references to Corbyn because they had nothing else. It was one of their major attacks on Labour in the 2019 general election. It worked so well, but it completely ceased to hold any sting really 6 months later. In fact, with recent events in America, you could actually even suggest in in constantly breaking the glass on the emergency Corbyn defence, which they never stopped doing. In fact, I think they're still doing it now. Johnson and Sunak were making mistakes that even the orange one isn't. Because like Trump seems really upset that Biden is no longer an asset to his campaign. But he at least seems to recognise this, doesn't seem to recognise very much else. The Tory leaders who straddle Liz Truss in Downing Street never seem to get that message. And in the same vein, there's no point Starmer constantly referencing Truss herself this Parliament. There's no point in going, oh, well, you made Liz Truss Prime Minister. She's not even an MP. There's no chance of her being part of the party leadership. However, with Truss, it's not the person herself who should be used against the new Tory leadership, as tempting as it will be. It'll be her policies. Trussonomics, as it became known. Because the events of this past week have shown that Truss still enjoys the patronage of influential, well-funded, if opaquely funded, think tanks, and her ideas still enjoy support in some sections of the media. The Daily Telegraph especially are constantly trying to promote the idea that actually she was an economic genius that was betrayed. And Labour can use this. When Sunak is replaced, the new leader will want to present themselves to the public as a new broom sweeping clean. If Jenrick or Tugendhat win, this task will be made a bit easier because most of the public don't really know who they are. They're not strongly associated with the past failures as some of the other candidates could be. But whoever wins will want to give the impression that the Conservative Party is going to change and change quickly. Tugendhat has said that Labour managed to turn themselves around inside a single parliament, which is absolutely true, and that he could do the same with the Conservative Party, which is a little more dubious. But in order to turn Labour around so quickly, I mean, one of the things Keir Starmer had to do was be very open about the reasons the public had for not voting Labour at the previous election. You know, whether fair or not, the public had various grievances against the Labour Party. Now, there was an extent to which, in theory, when that sort of thing happens, you could just quietly fix them behind the scenes. But in politics, you need to make a real show of it. You need to say to the voters, look, you had these issues with us. This is what we've done to fix them and acknowledge them. And Starmer never missed an opportunity to not only admit to those failings, but to emphasise how things had changed. With the Conservatives, it's not clear that they even know what their toxic associations are. But even where they do, it seems doubtful to me that they've got the fortitude to publicly face up to them, at least right now. Because one toxic legacy that cannot be doubted is the Liz Truss mini-budget. As a consequence, Truss herself is deeply unpopular in the UK. And I don't see any way of her recovering that popularity now, especially as she's unrepentant over her role in the crashing of the pound, the hole blown in pension funds and the extra rise in mortgage rates that her handiwork caused. At the time, you know, after she stepped down, she was so, oh yeah, I did it in the wrong way, sorry about that. Whereas now, she's going, no, I did it exactly right, it was everyone else's fault. But are the Tories collectively sorry about it? It's clear Liz Truss isn't. Are the Tories? Interesting to note, very few senior Tories seem to want to say. Sunak, of course, was more than happy to say that the Truss period was a disaster, but that's because he opposed it at the time in order to position himself to take over when she crashed, as she did, and afterwards he had to bill himself as the one who repaired the damage, even though he didn't really repair very much at all. But what about the rest of them, the ones who might take over, the ones who might be, even if they don't become the leader, will be senior members of that shadow cabinet? Like Tom Tugendhat, he backed Liz Truss for the leadership in 2022. Once he'd been knocked out of the contest himself, he backed her. Robert Jenrick, who's more likely to replace Sunak, didn't, to be fair. So he could have an easier time distancing the party from Truss, but would he from Trussonomics? Because here's how I could see things going. No point doing it now, but once the new leader's installed and their policies are firm, I mean, you might be talking a year or two down the line still, but once this new leadership starts to set out their economic policies, Labour should point to any of them that even smell like Trussonomics and label it as such. Accuse them of wanting to pick up where she left off. Say that Truss might be gone, but the ideas are still there. The reason the Tory client media are constantly writing articles trying to rewrite Liz Truss's history, it's not just because they want the Tories to keep supporting her economic brain fart. It's because they know that the public are repelled by them. Just as Boris Johnson tried to convince people that the COVID rules he and his ministers explained to the public in detail every day were somehow just a figment of our imaginations, so too Truss's allies in the media are trying to convince us that the mini-budget didn't really do anything and that any damage that might happen to have been caused at exactly the same time was actually the fault of other things. But the public don't believe it, and it's hard to imagine this message really working. So as the new Tory leadership starts to talk about their economic policies, Labour could just respond by saying, look, Liz Truss tried this and look what happened. Almost doesn't matter if the policy is, strictly speaking, Truss-like. It will be similar enough for the public because what Truss did was sort of what the Tories wanted to do anyway. In fact, Labour could try and develop a sort of reverse tax, borrow and spend narrative here. Because one of the best lines the Tories ever came up with was tax and spend, or tax, borrow and spend. The idea that Labour would come in, massively increase spending and then go, OK, we need to pay for this now. Whack up taxes, load up debt. They paint a picture of Labour governments being fiscally irresponsible, even though there is absolutely no historical data which fits that narrative. But they managed to make it stick. And one of the reasons they made it stick was because many of us in Labour actually do support the idea of borrowing to fund investment because it pays for itself. And we do support the idea of wealthier people paying their share of the tax burden. But most of the key voters don't agree with that. In other words, you level the charge that Labour want to raise borrowing and taxation. You hit the buttons that create quite a lot of fear amongst most of the swing voters, certainly compared to the Tories. You won't find many Labour Party members or MPs denying it because, we do want the wealthy to pay higher taxes than the Tories do. And we do want to use borrowing to fund investment. Well, the same could be said of the Tories in reverse. Accuse them of wanting to lower taxes and cut spending ideologically, not with any sort of plan. You won't find too many Tory MPs or members robustly denying it. Accuse the next leader of rebuilding Trussonomics. Force them to make a choice. Either admit that this is actually what they want to do, but we absolutely want to do what Truss tried to do, but maybe I've got a better plan to do it, at which point the public will be wary, if not downright terrified, or force them to disown Truss and her economic ideas, in which case Tory party members and MPs may go, oh no, we're not really happy with that. Because whenever Labour decide they want to win again, they always have to bend over backwards to deny this tax, borrow and spend charge. It creates discomfort within the party more so than anything else, and we accept it in large enough numbers only when we're sick of losing. The Tories may become this pragmatic themselves in time, but are they ready now? I suspect not. Especially as so many thought that they were nearly there when Truss was made Prime Minister. They were so close to their pirate haven utopia. So I would definitely use this if I were Labour. Attack anything as Trussonomics, force the new leader to either squirm or deny it, let it trigger schisms within the Conservative Party and a flurry of articles in the Tory client media arguing about it. Because although the Tories will obviously want to bounce back quickly, I don't think they're collectively ready to. After 2019, Labour had been out of power for about a decade. So enough people in the party were sick of watching all the good work of the previous government being incinerated, and they decided pragmatism was more important than ideology, even if it was uncomfortable. The Tories have only just lost. It'll be easy for many of them to think it was actually down to some simple thing that a bit of tinkering can fix. After all, they are the party of the easy fix, aren't they? I'm not sure they're ready to really deal with any of the toxic legacies they have. I don't think they're ready to face up to them, which I'll talk more about in a separate video this weekend, hopefully. But I think they're especially vulnerable to associations between whatever economic policies they adopt and Liz Truss. And the fact that she keeps getting herself in the news for behaving like a muppet, that helps as well. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe for further content and click the like button. You can also sign up for memberships if you'd like to support the channel further. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.